Hello, in this video I am going to talk about how to use web listeners. The term event refers to the occurrence of something. An event occurs when the state of an object changes. When these expressions occur, we can couldn't creation circular actions such as collecting total and current login in user, establishing database table when deploy the project, building database connection object, and so on. The Java X Servlet and Java X Servlet help package contain numerous event class and listener interfaces. The primary function of listener in a GUI application is to consider an event from a specified GUI component. Handle is using listener function and provide the response to the GUI application. The following technique is referred to as event handling or event delegating model in GUI application. Event category. Servlet events are divided into two categories: high level and low level. Servlet context level, application level event. This event concentrate resources or state held at appliance servlet context object event. Session level event in invalue resources or state associated with a sequence of requests from a single user session. In other words, it is stored with the HTTP session object. There are two types event on each of two levels: change in the life cycle, change in attributes. For each of four event categories, we can define one or more event listener classes. Multiple event categories can be monitored by a single listener class. Implement an interface or interfaces from the Java X Java Servlet package or Java X Servlet HTTP package is common way to make an ocean class. The listener interface. Listener interface description. Java Servlet send listener. Listener that will be alert if an asynchronous action start on a servlet request to which this listener was attracted has compound timed out or failed. Java Servlet context listener interface of resolving Servlet context lifecycle change notification event. Java X Servlet context attribute listener interface for receiving the servlet context attribute change notifying event. Java Servlet request listener interface for receiving notifies about request, entering and extend web applications scope. Java X Servlet request attribute listener Interface for receiving servlet request attribute change notifying event. JavaX servlet HTTP session listener. Interface for the receiving HTTP session live circle change notifying event. JavaX servlet HTTP session built-in listener. When an object is tied to or freed from session, it is alerted by JavaX servlet HTTP session binding listener. JavaX session HTTP session attribute listener. Interface for receiving HTTP session attribute change notifying events. JavaX servlet HTTP session on listener. Objects that are contact to a JavaX servlet HTTP session listener. Setups for using listener. If we want listener is other our web app, we must follow the set steps below. Step 1. Get the listener class ready. Take one user defined class which must be listener interface implements class from interface. Consider the public class listener in my listener. Step 2. In the web XML file, configure the listener class. The following XML tags must be used in the web.xml file to configure the listener class. Now this is an image related to what I said. This code. Except to HTTP session binding listener and HTTP session active listener, all listener request the listener configuration. Method for event listener, the related classes. Method for servlet considered listener and servlet considered event class. The following methods are defined by servlet considered text listener. Method void context text listener. The function is used to inform the listener that the servlet context has been formed and the application is now ready to handle request. Void context destroyed. The function is used to alert the listener that the program is about to be trimmed. When a web application is deployed on the server context event include the technique shown below, which your listener might call servlet context get servlet context. This method retrieves the servlet context object that was created or is going to be deleted, from which you may get any information you want. Method for servlet context applicant listener and the servlet context attribute event class. Servlet context attribute listener specify the following method. Method description. Void attribute added. It's used to inform the listener that the servlet context has been updated with an attribute void. attribute removed. It used inform the listener that attribute from servlet context has been deleted. Void attribute replaced. Its use inform the listener when an attribute and servlet context has been replaced. The event class servlet contain text attribute event is used to notify about change to the attribute of a web application's servlet context. It includes the technicals listed below which you listen can use. String get name. Return the name of the attribute that was added, deleted, or replaced as string. Object get value is a method is relative in the value an attribute that has been added, deleted, or replaced. This method returns the previous value, not the new value, in the event of replace attribute. Methods for HTTP session listeners and the HTTP session event class. HTTP lesson specific the following method. Method description. Void session creator. It is used inform the listener that a session has been established. Void session destroy. It used the listener know the session has been trimmed. When the session objective modified HTTP event inform the include the technique shown below the which you listener might call HTTP session get session. The function is used to obtain the grant on or delete session object. Method for HTTP session attribute listener and the HTTP session binding event class. HTTP session attribute listener specify the following method. Method description. Void attribute added. It informs the listener that a new attribute has been introduced to the session. Void attribute removed. It's used to inform the listener when a session attribute has been deleted. Void. It's used to inform the listener when an attribute in the session has been replaced. When an object implement HTTP session binding listener is bounds or freed from session. HTTP session binding event is delivered to that object or to a HTTP session attribute listener that has been set in the deployment descriptor when any attribute is bound, unbound, or replaced in a session. It includes a technical list below which you listener can use. String get name. Return the name of attribute that was added, deleted, or replaced and a string. Object get value. It's a method for relative the value of an attribute that has been added, deleted, replaced. The methods returns and previous value, not new values, the event for replace attribute. HTTP session get session. The method is used to obtain the session object whose attribute has changed. Example: to discount the servlet listener in action, the create basics web application in Xlim the built-in dynamic web page called the servlet listener example, and the project structure will look like this. Now this is an image related to what I said. The concept init params, the listener setting will be defined in web XML. The class database continually is database management. The object will be added the servlet context as an attribute. I'll delay to the session characters others to my servlet. We will use the app context listener to read the servlet context init parameters and use them to create the database management object, which will then set as attribute on the servlet context object. Servlet context attribute listener is simple implementation for login the event when an attribute in the servlet context is added, removed, replaced. HTTP session listener is a simple implementation to log to event when the session create to destroy. Servlet request listener is to log the servlet request IP address when the request initialized and destroyed. Web XML. Now this is an code example related to what I said. Database management manager Java. App context attribute listener Java. This code example. My servlet request listener Java. This code example. My session listener Java. This code example. My servlet Java. This code. Output. When we deploy our application and access my servlet, the server log file will include the following logs. Output. In the browser, we will see something like this. Browser. I will now show the all at once. Thanks for watching.